Welcome to the ArmaniTalks YouTube channel, the #1 YouTube channel for you to level up your communication skills, learn the art of public speaking, social skills, and personal branding to take your message to the world. If you're new to this channel, make sure you hit subscribe right down below for 3 weekly videos on how to become a better communicator. For today's episode, we're going to be talking about what is leverage. So throughout my life, I've had the pleasure of living in different areas of the world. For a while, I used to live in Bangladesh. For another period of time, I lived in Florida, to be specific, West Palm Beach. Then I lived in Tampa. Then I lived in DC, Virginia. Then I lived in New Jersey. Now I'm back in Tampa. I've had the pleasure of living in multiple different spots throughout my lifetime. And this gave me more perspective. And you know what I noticed? Let's talk about West Palm Beach for an example. In West Palm Beach, if you didn't have a car, that was a huge issue because to get around from point A to point B to point C, you need a car. Because even the bus systems, it's okay, but it takes a while. There's no predictability to it. It's best if you have a car. But by the time that I was living in DC, things changed. In DC, if you had a car, people sort of felt sorry for you. They were like, oh my God, bro, I feel so bad for you because you probably get stuck in traffic a lot. I'm like, well, what do? I walk. You walk? Yeah, I walk. Because walking in the city is much more nimble. You could curve through people very easily and say you're tired. Well, rather than walking, then you could just take the metro. But at least you have the freedom because when you have the car, everyone is stuck in traffic. They don't think in DC traffic, you're just going to go from point A to point B without much traffic. That's something to be expected. So from these two scenarios, you can notice something. In West Palm Beach, having a car helps you out tremendously, while in DC, having a car is seen as a hassle. A leverage is defined as the maximum use of something, using something to its maximum advantage. In situation 1, a car is a lever. In situation 2, your feet are your lever. The reason that this is so important is because levers are completely contextual based. And when you understand that it's contextual based, you start to have a little bit more of a tamed ego. Have you ever seen that one athlete that's an amazing ball player, for example, but by the time that they transition into business, they suck? They don't try to get in any advisors. They don't read any books. They don't practice. They just think because they're good in basketball that they're going to be good in business. I'll be real. I fell for this trap as well. When I was first starting my podcast, I came in with the attitude, I give speeches. I used to be the external vice president of Toastmasters, one of the biggest global public speaking clubs in the world. I walk around stage. I use my palms. I use my face. What could be so hard about sitting on your ass and talking in a mic? That's light work. I could easily be a great podcaster. So I took the lever from the public speaking world and I brought it into the podcasting world. And I kept recording podcast after podcast. And eventually I had one of my friends who has a very successful podcast review it. I was like, let me know what you think. In my mind, I already thought that he was going to love it. He's going to hype me up. But after listening to it, he came back and he shredded it apart. He said, bro, can I be real with you? I wouldn't have it any other way. That was one of the worst things I've ever heard in my life. Wait a minute. Did you say worst? Yes. That was awful, bro. You just sound super awkward when you're giving this podcast. You don't sound like a natural. You got to practice more. Wait a minute. You said it's the worst that you've ever heard? The worst, bro. And although that did hurt my ego, one thing that I was able to learn from it was that he was right. Just because I had the ability to give speeches to a scaled audience does not mean that it was the same thing in the world of podcasting. But here's what happened. Here's what happened once my friend gave me that awareness. I was able to practice and I started to build a little bit more awareness into the entire podcasting game. You see, in the public speaking world, you are using your palms, you are using your facial expressions, you are moving around stage. But in the podcasting world, All that is noise. You don't need to use your palms. You don't need to use your face. You don't need to walk around stage. So all the energy that you're eliminating from that, you need to target it into your voice. And you need to get that voice and you need to target it into the mic. It took a good amount of practice, but eventually the podcast started to get better and better and better. And my friend said, dude, you're improving. But he didn't stop there. And this is what you want to take note of. When you have a certain skill set that you're good at, as long as you have humility and a humble attitude entering a new one, then it's much easier to pick it up. Because for my friend, it took him at least a year to 2 years to start feeling calm on the podcast mic. But for me, it took around 8 episodes. And he asked, he's like, dude, how the hell did you pick it up so quick? I mean, I remember just criticizing you a few months ago. You're already picking it up. And that's where the muscle memory starts to come in. You see, once you start learning something very well, it's easier to learn something else very well, especially when you're talking about going from general to specific. Let's talk about communication skills. Communication skills in itself is very, very general. It's sort of like saying sports. What are you good at? I'm good at sports. Well, what kind of sports? That's when you have to get specific. It's the same thing with communication skills. Oh, I'm good at communication skills. Which part? There's public speaking, there's podcasting, there's YouTubing, there's social skills, there's personal branding. There's so many different niches within this umbrella. But once you start figuring out one particular niche, it's so much easier to pick up another niche. And just to give you another example, if you conquer speech anxiety, if you can speak in front of an audience of 20 to 30 people, the public speaking niche, it is so much easier to figure out the social skills niche. I always say, if you want to conquer social anxiety, conquer speech anxiety first. Because if you can speak in front of 20 people with ease, speaking in front of one-to-one conversations at a time, that's light work. But ultimately, you want to understand that leverages are context-based. Just because you're good in one thing does not necessarily mean that you'll be good at something else. It's going to require practice. So enter that new task with a level of humility and you'll pick it up much quicker. That's how your brain works. Your brain likes to be fed information, but it's always going to operate in certain frameworks. Kobe Bryant. A lot of people know Kobe Bryant as an amazing basketball player. But people didn't know about the other great sides to him. Not only was he an advanced basketball player who retired with 5+ rings, but he also knew how to play the piano very well. He also was a great storyteller. Did you know that he won an Oscars? He also was a great businessman. But he said that by focusing, learning the frameworks of mastering one skill, it was so much easier to get those frameworks and apply it to these different categories. So start to learn from this element where leverages are all around you. Your brain is naturally a leverage-seeking machine. And when you start bringing awareness to it, that's when it's much easier to learn these different fundamentals without wasting a bunch of time. We always hear the famous quote, either you're the master of, like the master of many things or doer of none, something like that. You just want to be the master of many things. I know that's not how the full quote goes. I know that there's an additional line after it, but you want to be the master of many things. You want to be great at public speaking. You want to be great in front of YouTube. You want to be a great podcaster. You want to be great in one-on-one conversations. And a lot of Debbie Downers are like, well, that sounds like too much. No. Just get really good at one thing. I guarantee you it is going to spill on over, especially in the world of communication skills. If you want to check out my podcast, which I have been improving on as of the criticism from a year and a half ago, then I'm going to drop the link in the description box right on below. Also, I'm going to have multiple resources on how to improve your communication skills, whether it's in the field of emotional intelligence, content creation, storytelling, etc., all in the description box. So make sure you check that out right on below. I appreciate you for giving me your time, and I will catch you on the next episode of the Armani Talks YouTube channel.